Dearest readingest people, there are some books you can't keep quiet about. Some books open up before you and subsume you so wholly that you cannot but be filled with some evangelical zeal to hold forth upon them, to grasp by the lapels and shake thoroughly every person you come across, insisting that they too read these books. Because they too must bask in the highs and shiver in the lows, and no descriptor nor summary, nothing but a perfect word-by-word replication will do justice to all that this book has wrought upon you. They too must read and understand in a way that no one who hasn't read these books can. Here are my top 10 books I've read in 2017. A small disclaimer before we start, I've decided that this list won't include any books that are in any way connected to my day job. When you work on books and you know their authors, you can't include one book without including them all. And then keeping my list to a mere 10 would be somewhat impossible. So if you're wondering why I didn't choose any books by my beloved gallants, that's why. Number 10. The Diary of a Bookseller by Shaun Bythell. So I was on tour as this book first claimed its shelf space, trooping up and down the country, wandering through stacks, scrutinising the workaday bookshop wares as my poor belaboured colleague signed his merry way through a mountain of books bearing his name. I think I lasted maybe 3 bookshops before I finally gave in and bought a copy, after myriad thumbings through and chuckling at many a page. Those of you who followed my channel for a little while might be aware that I spent many a good year working in what felt like the majority of London's bookshops. And thus in this book I couldn't resist a vicarious journey back to the dusty halls. Shaun's book is, as the title would suggest, a diary of his life as a bookseller. He starts the diary on a random day and he takes you through a year. With caustic wit, he details the trials and tribulations. The customers who demand 40p off a weighty tome that costs all of £2.60. The eccentric staff who try and persuade him of the delights of only marginally squashed food fresh from the co-op bins, and of course the soul-crushing days when you don't sell a single book. If you're a fan of Dylan Moran in Black Books, this is something you'll really enjoy, and as an ex-bookseller I would like to make it compulsory reading for every customer who prattles across the desk at you saying that bookselling must be the best job in the world. Number 9. Maresi by Maria Turtschaninoff. Very out of character, this is the only YA book to make my list this year. I picked it up in February and instantly fell in love with it. It's the story of an island of women, and as it unfolds you explore the barriers that have stood against them, the horrors they've had to face in societies where men have been more privileged, and the beautiful relationships they have with each other. It's like Atwood with mythic fairy tale notes. I'm definitely gonna acquire a copy of its sequel, Neondel, at some point this year and give that a read too. Number 8. Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky. The reason I'm not holding this one up to the camera is that I don't own a physical copy. I read it on Kindle on my very tiny and very broken phone screen, and that in itself should be a testament to how good this book is. I've been meaning to read this book ever since it won the Arthur C. Clarke Award in 2016, but I knew it contained spiders, and I really dislike spiders. This book is so brilliant though that I top 10'd it, despite spiders. In the future, humanity is all but lost. We've been pared down to a few desperate ark ships, sent out blindly into space, hoping that we'll find something. And humanity sleeps away the eons in suspension, waiting. We follow a dual narrative. First, a classicist, who is dragged from sleep in disorientated gasps for brief glimpses over the millennia. And then we look down at a new planet. A planet upon which spiders have evolved. We check in again and again over generations, visiting a numerous Portias and Biancas and Fabians, and we watch these spiders develop society and religion, and even question the idea that males should be entirely subservient to females. This book put me in a bind I couldn't previously have imagined. Did I really want humanity to live on if it meant the destruction of new civilizations? Number 7, This Is Going to Hurt by Adam Kay. This is another diary. It's 6 years of Adam's life as a junior doctor. And it's hilarious. Adam has a brilliant style of writing and recounts stories of patients and doctors that make you cringe and giggle. But I also think you'd be hard-pressed to not come away from it furious. Adam is no longer a doctor. He tells you that right at the beginning. And reading this book, you wonder how anyone sticks it out, how anyone puts in those hours, sacrifices their relationships, pours in every ounce of physical and emotional energy with so little support. It is a book I think everyone should read, because the extent to which our government has managed to chip away at the NHS to the detriment of staff and patients, it's beyond me. Number 6. Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race by Reni Eddo-Lodge. This book is a perfect treatise on the systematic racism that is still rampant throughout our society. Reni looks at historical narratives, unacknowledged privileges, feminism that only benefits white people, and unless I simply read aloud from this book, I will not do justice in expounding upon it. I highly recommend everyone goes and reads it. It is brilliant for illuminating and giving words to the uneven platform and continual harrying throughout life that people of colour face. Number 5. Baking with Kafka by Tom Gauld. This is a collection of comics, and you might have seen some of them previously as they often feature in The Guardian and New Scientist magazine. I loved these in particular because a lot of them were bookish, but I'm just completely captivated with Tom's art style and humour. I've basically bought this book for all the authors I know, the publishing people, friends who held a book once, and I'm generally trying to track down everything that Tom has ever penned. Number 4. Stories of Your Life and Others, or Arrival if you have the movie tie-in, by Chiang. This was definitely the year of the sci-fi short story for me. I was introduced to this collection by the short story that inspired the movie, but in my opinion there's others in here even better. The ideas contained within completely astounded me, especially those that touched upon religion or language. I'd often finish a story and need to pause, to contemplate, to try and fail to take in all that Ted had touched upon. He doesn't waste a word drawing out these quick tales, and yet there are such complexities in them. Number 3. The Paper Menagerie by Ken Liu. Yes, more sci-fi short stories. I was actually recommended these by Kitty G after I told her how much I loved Ted Chiang. In particular, of the stories contained herein, I would recommend one called State Change, which at 15 pages is possibly my favourite thing that has been written ever. It sketches a world in which people's souls take the form of an object outside of their bodies and accompany them throughout their life. Our main character, her soul is an ice cube, and she's terrified of it melting. You can actually read State Change in its entirety on Ken Liu's website, so I will link it below. I found it paradigm altering and perfect in every word. Number 2. The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. Yes, I know I'm quite behind. 2017 was the year most people were extolling the last book in this series, and I've just got through the first. Well, I'm here to tell you that everyone else was right. It is brilliant. It deserves every award and accolade that's been heaped upon it and more. It's fantasy in which the world is constantly on the edge of annihilation, with earthquakes that shake the strata and kill huge swathes of the population. In this world, there are people called Origines, with the ability to sense and control earthquakes, but they are treated with fear and hostility. They're harshly controlled and sometimes just killed outright. Our story weaves together multiple threads to tell a harsh but utterly fantastic tale. It is poetic, it has beautiful non-traditional romances, it is a brilliant BAME writer writing brilliant BAME characters, and I have never read a fantasy novel that so perfectly illustrates what it's like to live as a person whom society has deemed beneath them. So finally, we have reached my favourite book I read in 2017, and I've cheated. I've done 2 books. They are The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet and A Closed and Common Orbit by Becky Chambers. My favourite TV show is Firefly by Joss Whedon, and when I started The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, it reminded me of everything that was good about that show and more. Both are essentially tales of a ragtag group of misfits all stuck on a spaceship together. Apparently that's my optimal story, guys. I read for characters first. Plot and all that can follow afterwards, and for me it was characters that led both of Becky's books. I always would have said though that I'm more of a fantasy reader, less of a sci-fi reader, and one of the reasons behind that was that I found alien characters quite alienating. Becky managed to win me round. I loved her characters so much, and whether they were escaping mysterious pasts, falling into forbidden romances, or just awkwardly trying to make friends, I just wanted them to be okay and happy. I think a lot of my reading had grown quite dark, and these were basically hugs in book form. It was happy characters, being lovely to one another, and generally having jolly adventures in space, all the while exploring left-wing ideas, asking, should you cure disabilities, looking at what different genders there are, and different relationship types. They have swiftly become books I read over and over, and I cannot wait for Becky's new book, which comes out later this year, Record of a Spaceborne Few. So there you have it, my top books of the year. Let me know in the comments down below if you've read any of those and have thoughts, or if you fancy reading any of those. Also, let me know your favourite books of the year so I can add to my to-read pile. Other than that, I will see you next week. Bye guys. Don't pick an idea out of the tumultuous tempest, even an idea satirising the idea of picking ideas. Don't stumblingly start to piece together